Yes, hello.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judges imagine how pathetic you are living under threat of bombing, of lots of threats that is always haunted you every day, every night, every time. You don't have any food to eat today. The only thing that is still exists is the water in your house, even if it is contaminated by even it is contaminated by the effort that done by our action. Even we do not have an accessible healthcare to the extent we are always suffering. Even we just sit down and wait until we are died. We cannot wait. We cannot sit any longer to take all the torture that Israeli give to us as Palestinian. What do as Palestinian? And therefore, we think we would like to do. We like to step to front to create another changes by creating this violent or opposed to make the desert bloom and so on so stuff. What do we mean by violently oppose? Violently oppose is that we will actively condemn those efforts done by the Jews that give so many waste into our water. We will burn uh, their forest, for example, to the extent destroy all the effort that has done by the Jewish or Israeli. Therefore, as Palestinian and environmentalists, we propose this motion. Our stance is clear that in order to save the environment by using violence, in order to make the Israeli or Jewish deterrence effect, therefore we proudly to propose this motion. Going to my first argument, why it is urgent for us to do the violence. Look, it is so heartbreaking seeing our country has been destroyed by fire, by bombing those because those done by Israeli that try to prioritize their environment by planting forests and etc. They create waterways and so on so stuff. Look, notice on how that they are trying to build these things in the destroyed Palestinian village. But you need to notice on how their effort are also harming those Palestinians who are still living under the threats of Israeli in the very first beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Look, it might seem as something that is good because they are trying to create those dam, and then also they try to create forest and so on so stuff. But look, what it will result into, ladies and gentlemen, that will cause a lot of damage for Palestinian, loss of cause a lot of damage for Palestinians, such as the waterways in the very first beginning. Why? Because when the society consumes the water that is contaminated by the chemical that given by the Israeli, they will die, ladies and gentlemen. They will struggle anymore healthcare or even the health, help from the people in Palestinian. Notice on how Israeli are also trying to bombing or trying to attack the healthcare that exists in Palestinian in the very first beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, we think the moment when they are trying to contaminate our water, that's the moment we are also losing our last hope to at the very survive in the middle of bombs and terror that given by the Israeli in the very first place. Notice on how Palestinians still under Israel colonialism, it's hard for them to get the health care system in the very first beginning. Look, opening opposition might saying that they will stick with status quo where they are opposed this kind of effort by status quo, like campaigning. Even they are doing by diplomatic way that they are trying to pursue Israeli to stop doing this kind of thing. But we think it will not be enough, ladies and gentlemen. They Israel won't hear us anyway. Even they will try to shut us down because they think that is not important to hear what Palestinians says, ladies and gentlemen. But therefore, but the question is that how then they will hear us anyway and they will not attack us anyway. Look, what's going to be happen under our look. This is the threat of that both sides will take, ladies and gentlemen. With or without violence, we are still going to be shut down by the Israeli in the very first beginning. But let's compare what's going to be happen under our side of the house. Look, the moment we are trying to destroy all the things that given by the Israeli, what's going to be happen is that it shows that we still have the effort and we are not just letting our land is our water contaminated by those Israeli. We are still giving our effort to show that that we are want to protect what we have, ladies and gentlemen. Unlike opposition side of the house, that they are just sit down, that they are just softly opposed this kind of effort by Jewish. What's going to be happen is that they are shut down and will be no significant impact. At the very least, under our side of the house, the moment when there is the urgency coming from our side that we trying to stop all the things that happen towards our side, it will be help. Just like on how that we are trying to protect our Al-Aqsa by throwing a stone towards Israel. Like it might seem as something that is tiny and will not and easy to be lost by the Israel in the first beginning. But at the very least, what we do is that to show our intention that we want to protect our land in the very first beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, we think we have to do it by violence in the very first beginning, even if both sides will still trading of our life in the very first beginning, ladies and gentlemen. But secondly, how do we why it will create better environment under opening government side of the house? Look, deterrence effect might be not affected those Israeli, but why it will be better under our side of the house, ladies and gentlemen? The moment when Israeli see that we are have the intention to attack them back, that's the moment they will also have the urgency to think what kind of strategy that will stop us anyway, ladies and gentlemen. What's going to happen is that also international funding will also see the effort that given by the Palestinian in the very first beginning, and therefore it will be better under our side of the house simply because we are do such effort in the very first beginning to prove to them that we have the intention to protect our waste, not only sit down and doing this kind of diplomatic way that will not give any significant impact towards our land. Therefore, we propose this motion.
We thank Kiam for that speech. Next, we call upon the Leader of Opposition.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, first let me set my timer. Okay, and by the way, my POI preference is through the chat, and I will start my speech in 3, 2. So, ladies and gentlemen, opening governments say some negative things about Israel. They only focusing on the things that happened before by underestimating the good proposal of making this desert bloom is. And talking about this issue, we think that we should look closer and understanding what will be happening and what is the Israeli real attention on doing this. So we agree that we should protecting the Palestinian people, but we don't think that by not doing or by not agreeing to this desert bloom will gonna make the environment become better because this desert bloom is gonna surely fix the nature which are on the Palestinian area that has been destroyed. And by the way, welcome to my arguments. So this desert bloom will eventually producing a better outcome, whether it is for the nature or also for the society. Well, first thing first, we would like to highlight that not all the Israeli-Palestine relation is always problematic. In this case, making a desert bloom is not that problematic because from the side of environmentalists, as the environmentalists, by making this desert bloom, Israeli is helping us to fix the nature that have been destroyed. We think that whether the destroyed area in Palestine was done by Israel or not is something that are not we should not focus in this debate, because the thing that matters the most here now is how we can fix and save the nature better. But ladies and gentlemen, we also realize that by only seeing from this perspective will somehow harmful Palestinian on its probability of Israel doing some kind of annexation to their land. So if we ignore it, so it will be kind of awful, but that's why we are coming with these two mechanisms here. So the first is we should run a tight maintaining on the process of making the desert bloom. So that's what we can bind the Israeli or Jewish to only focusing on fixing the environment and not doing anything rather than fixing the destroyed area. And second mechanism here is we're gonna making some sort of punishment to Israeli if and only if they are off track or doing another thing other than making the desert bloom. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the side that we could bring to you here is how we should focusing on maintaining the nature by giving a chance for Israeli to do or making the desert bloom, with also maintaining the effort on taking Palestine by running the strict policy in the middle of this desert making process. So we, as the opening opposition, is proud to host. Thank you.
We thank the leader of opposition for that speech. Next, we call upon the Deputy Prime Minister. You're here.
All right, give me 1 minute. Alright, my pronoun is she, her. If there's any problem with my voice or my signal, please tell me directly. PLI only be received through chat. And I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, just opening opposition ridiculously tap into this debate by saying that it's completely okay to make the desert bloom even if people are dying in Palestine. That we clearly don't agree with that, because notice we think that this debate should run and only run within the idea of whether or not we are going to violently oppose this desert bloom, or only going to oppose and not through by a violent methods toward the desert bloom that are created by Palestine. Notice on how opposition burden is first. Why even if it's too late to save those Palestinian people by through those discourse, diplomatic way and so on and so forth, then why it's still completely fine under the set of the house? And second, how then the opposing process toward the desert bloom will be done under opposition side of the house? That never be explained by them. That never been explained by them, right? All my rebuttal will be intertwined in my substantive. First of all, which proposal could save people under the Palestinian even better? Look, they told you on how there is punishment and sanction toward the Israeli and so on and so forth. We say no, right? those punishment that are given by Israel is hardly unlikely that those Israel people, for example, are going to follow the sanction or follow the punishment to begin with. Right? There's already a long of history on how Israeli never ever uh, never ever agree with those punishment and sanction that are given by them. Even the United Nation, even for the United Nation, is still going to be so hard for them to impose sanction toward the Israeli to begin with. So we don't think that these kind of sanction and punishment are going to be happen anyway under the set of the house, and they never tell us how the process will look like under the set of the house, because Bella already told you on how Israeli always attack Palestine and so on and so forth. The Palestinian people are always living under the terror of bombing and so on. So we think that violently opposed is still going to be completely fine for this in order to save these Palestinian people from those Israeli, right? Because look, the moment Israeli consciously throw water waste into existing Palestinian village is that the moment we know that what Israeli want is not to mitigating climate change, like what environmentalists in believe, right? But to torture the existing Palestinian village, like village life. What Israeli want is by slowly cleansing the ethnic of existing Palestinian village life by throwing the water waste and cover them with the idea of their protecting the environment that they are building them as water and so on and so forth. Because notice those kind of source water, for example, that are always glorified by this desert bloom, are not even benefiting Palestinian to begin with. What Palestinian get is only the water waste, is only the harm of those desert bloom. So we question why the opening opposition want to protect and support the meat of desert bloom, because we believe that even if you want to protecting environment, what you need to protect first is how these people are going to live. It's about the living condition of these people around that area, right? So we think that there is no justification on why then they still want to protect they still want to support Israeli to create this desert bloom. Thus, there is no desert bloom mission should run in this debate, right? Because taking a look on how it's going to look like under our set of the house, compare, right? Under our side of the house, we are going to attack Israeli that are building this desert bloom. We are going to burn. We are going to destroy the dam that they make, and so on and so forth. Because taking a look under the status quo on how the last Israeli attack, right? They soften their attack because of how the Hamas are also attacking them. The Hamas people or the Palestinian people are also protecting themselves. So I believe that these violently oppose this desert bloom is a way of these Palestinian people to protect themselves, ladies and gentlemen, from this desert bloom. Bella already told you on how Palestinian people are always living in suffer, right? The moment they are getting this waste water, for example, that are coming from this desert bloom, they didn't have any access to our healthcare system. They didn't even have any access to a proper food and water. Means what? Means the only water source is the wastewater that are coming from this desert bloom, ladies and gentlemen. This shows you on how this existing Palestinian people, existing Palestinian village are going to slowly getting hurt, ladies and gentlemen. Either it is from diarrhea, for example, and so on and so forth. But because they didn't even have a proper food, proper living standard, they didn't even receive a proper health care, means a lot of people are going to die because of those kind of things, right? People, especially children in Palestine, are going to die because of these things. So we think that environmentalism movement should not only focus on how on how they are going to build the tree or how they are going to provide us a water source, but they need also to see, are the people are getting killed by wastewater? Are the people are getting the benefit of those kind of things? Yes, the benefit might exist, the benefit might exist, but notice people are getting died from this benefit, ladies and gentlemen. So I think that the benefit that opening opposition try to prove in this debate is inherently is not really exclusive under the set of the house, right? Because look, under our set of the house, even if without these desert boom, we still could do reboisation, water dam, and so on and so forth in other places that are not supported by Israeli, ladies and gentlemen. Those kind of policy are still going to be happen under our set of the house. But under our set of the house, notice that these Palestinian people are still going to protect themselves, are still going to try to stay alive. Thus, we propose this motion.
We thank the Deputy Prime Minister. Now continuing, we call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. I'm gonna start. Okay, before that, my pure preference is just unmuting yourself. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Eju, first clarifications. How can countries work to guarantee ample and drinkable water for their citizens? Water shortage are already a fact for some countries and increase the fear for the global at large. Okay, let me clarify that. Before that, I want to clarify that the interests of making the desert bloom are two things. The first is avoiding water crisis and the water supply management. And the second thing is to optimize the usage of the destroyed land become a green land. Okay, I'm gonna explain on my argument later. Before that, several rebuttal. The missions of these blooms that come from Israel doesn't mean that we directly destroying Palestinian peoples or Palestinian citizens. As the environmentalists, our stance is clear that we want to maintain the natures and protecting the environments due to the problematic things that happen on the Middle East area, for example, the Palestinians and also the Israel. Okay, let me jump to my argument. The first thing is why we said that we can avoiding water crisis, and also the water is for the water supply management. The first thing is why we said we is avoiding a water crisis that happening in the Middle East area, because making the desert bloom doesn't necessarily mean that we only making the green land and so on and so forth, but we also maintaining how the destroyed land on the Palestinians can become a usage land for the two countries or for 2 or 3 countries that there. And also we believe that and also we believe that what opening government side of the house say that the war and the conflict and the chaosities between Israel and between Palestinians, they said the conflict it's always happens all the time, and we don't know when or when will the war ends, right? And what the environmentalist concern here is how can we manage the unused unused land of Palestinians can be a usage land for the countries. And also, second thing is about the optimizations. We think that making a desert blooms with Israel making a desert blooms with a lot of plan long before the bombing and the conflict happens, and so on and so forth. And that's why the Israel already make plans which can which plan that can make the desert blooms is beneficial for both countries, and also for Israel itself. And why I said desert blooms is beneficial for us is because
Yeah, it
desert
is.
bloom is one. No, thank you. Desert blooms is one of the concept of the environmentalists. What I say, the one of the concept of environmentalists, because when we make a desert blooms, we are sustain our it's about the sustainable development. Why I say it's sustainable development? Because development is a crucially important, and technology will provide the solutions, but it needs to be guided and a bad actions actively regulated way. And that's why we make the desert blooms. And and why these benefits of sustainability of the desert bloom is it's important to consider where the individuals and society derive their well-being. Many people think that health, the health of the economy is from that the individual and social well-being derive from that, and this is not true, because environmental well-being is crucial to human well-being, because that our physical resource comes. That's why I believe that we have to the missions of making desert blooms in the lands that destroyed in Palestinians, and we proud to oppose. Thank you.
We thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for that speech. Next, we call a permit.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, so my POI prefers is by chat. So if you have any POI, in 3, 2. Okay, so opening opposition said that Palestinian people. The question is, will it provide what the purpose of the desert bloom? So judges, the purpose of desert bloom is to promote planting forests over destroyed land, building reservoirs and dams for portions of clean water, and promoting better agriculture farming. I said it was true if it is will guarantee its Palestinians better life for Palestine, but not for guarding or protecting Palestine. So as Palestinian and environmentalists, we have to violently oppose the making of desert bloom mission in the context that a lot of these efforts are done on destroyed Palestinian villages, and a lot of water waste runs into existing Palestinian villages. So because the opening government have said totally clear about the impact of the water waste Palestinian, not see from the politic view, as we know that from years ago until now, Israel and Palestine have the problem of unresolved territorial disputes. Even today, the Israelis still want and are still trying to take the land of Palestinian part because they feel it is the right. Even though as the color of the countries, we never really know behind it because of the many interferences from the stories of previous people. Then what if all this is just a cover for Israel to take over the land again from the Palestine? Even though it's not Israel's cover, this will raise a lot of people's viewpoints considering the things Israel has done to Palestine. Moreover, human violence cannot be tolerated for any reason. And with this desert bloom for the Palestinian people, it is very possible to the world community to look more subjectively at Israel and forget about the many human violence that was happened before. Despite the fact that Hamas was attacked by Israel and not Palestine, but this war of such magnitude also had a big impact and a lot of blood in Palestine, which we also call human violence, of course. So, and we never know in advance what the intention is behind the act of Israel to making the desert bloom. So, will you just provide assistance in the form of desert blooms for the good of the environment? We never know. So, it is clear that the opportunity for the Palestinian people to get lost is very large. As a Palestinian person, I clearly will not support this bloom desert even if it's for environmental reasons. Because with this reason, Israel. I'm sorry. Because with these reasons, Israel people can justify that the damaged land and in the hands of the Palestinians is better taken by them, because the fact with them the land is getting better, and like the context stated in the motion that the world will never know there will be water flowing into Palestinian villages, and it is clear very detrimental to the Palestinian villages. This can even lead a new conflict due to wastewater caused by Israel on Palestinian land, which is very likely to cause huge losses and dispute the health of Palestinian people. And they can shout each other and make a trouble in their environmental. And it is clear that if new problems are created, it will be very possible for those two countries, and it's clear that if new problems are created, it will be very possible for these countries to arms a war, which will clearly be very detrimental there, damaging to the environment, and even causing massive pollution and increasing the possibility of rising natural temperatures. That's all of me. Thank you.
We thank the member of government for that speech. Next, we call upon the member of opposition.
Test, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. If you guys want to give POI, just put it into your chat box. My gender pronouns is him or he. I'd like to start my speech. I'd like to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, the entire government couldn't prove us how their action, which is violently oppose the making of desert bloom mission, could exactly protect their land and exactly could impact it towards the action of the Israel itself. They can stop their mission, for example. So it proved to us that the entire government couldn't give us a strong and also a clear stance on how they can convince us by doing this by oppose this proposal is going to be impacted towards the future of this Palestinian itself. But we, as the closing opposition here, we would like to prove to you how by cooperating and can build a relation with the Israel itself could save a lot of lives a lot of people in the future, ladies and gentlemen. Before I move on, let me make some point of rebuttals towards the government side of the house. They talk to us like they want to give a deterrent effect. They want to give a deterrent effect for the Israel itself because the diplomatic way is already doesn't enough to begin with. But it's too naive because when you against them, Israel will do the extreme way to build this mission, whether you agree or not, right? What we want to achieve, because we don't want this Palestinian just more suffer and being the victim of the Israel violation anyway. We want to use an elegant way how to make Israel could be a good boy, because we shout to Israel that we have no problem with this mission as long as there's no violation during this mission. And even if when the opening government say that even if they don't have desert bloom, Palestinian can do the reforestation and protect themselves by their own, for example. But it's totally not true, because moreover, if your place already destroyed by the bomb, for example, and water already contaminated, it means it's really hard to rebuild and upgrading your environment, right? Because it needs a lot of cost, it needs a more advanced technology that you don't have, and those are the things that Palestinian doesn't have for now. And when Israel want to rebuild the place by this desert bloom mission, it means they have interest to make that land become more sustainable, right? So coming to our substantive, so what is the characterization of Israel? So Israel now, they have more power, they have more power in and they have more cost and money, they have more advanced technology, and they have more power in terms of the military officer itself. For what about the characterization? So we need to use this opportunity in order to benefit this kind of Israel program in order to sustain our land as well. So what about the characterization of Palestine? Palestine nowadays has less power in terms of quantity, technology, and military, and also but they are so loyal to protect themselves and their land, for example, but they didn't consider about the logical values, for example. So if they want to against the Israel itself right now by physically, so it's going to be useless, because you already in fact you are less capable and you are less powerful rather than your enemy. So it is not going to be a good strategy for you to do the hard way, right? So we believe that by making this desert bloom, by not violently oppose this making desert bloom, it still has many benefits, right? For the sustainability of our land, like we will get a good sanitation, clean water supply, and this is it's still aiming for the society again, still aiming for the society sustainability, right? So coming with our argument, why we don't have to violently oppose the making of the desert bloom mission. Number one, this mission will target the place that already destroyed and the villages that has a very bad quality of water supply because already contaminated by limbah, for example. Look, in that places, Palestinians couldn't do anything. They are powerless even if they against the Israel. But at the end, Israel can easily force them and choose the extreme way to make them accept this mission, right? So now, rather than we against them in terms of power, much better to use opportunity to rebuild our land for a better situation, right? At least by accepting this mission, we also will get benefit. We will get a fresh water supply, proper life, and etc. So it's going to be a win-win solution between Israel and also the Palestinians. Of course, to deal with the superpower country that has a strong military, we need to be more smart, right? We need to use a diplomacy way, but we would like to prove you how the diplomacy way is still enough under our side of the house. Example, like we can make the agreement between the Israel and our country, for example, or with another third party. Like they are still able to make the desert bloom without killing and harming the Palestinians, and relocate the Palestinian itself during the project or reconstruction into a better place. So how this diplomacy can work? We can use our platform as Palestine. We have our ally, which is Arab League, for example. Arab League has power to negotiate with Israel. Have corporation in another part, like in oil and etc. And also, why Arabic is still justified to have this thing, because they have a same background and they have a long historical story and background, which is still same and become the sibling of the Palestine itself in the past. So it means there will be moral connection and there will be moral relation between the Palestine and also the Arab League. That's why League still have capability and still have a relation with the Palestine. That is why they are justified enough to negotiate with the Israel, like what was like United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey even and such. And number two, if status quo already proved to us, even when the bombing happened, and even United Nations, super country like Russia, Turkey, and etc. couldn't stop the Israel action, right? Meaning we are less powerful in a hard way. So that's the right time to use the soft way. Let's stop the violation and be peace. Cooperating with Israel for the betterment doesn't mean that it is fully wrong. By cooperating with them, imagine how many lives, children, women, and people that we already saved, right? So think smarter for now. So we don't want this Palestinian wasting their energy for something not effective that we already know that they are less capable enough in terms of power. Because when you are less powerful than them right now, it means it is not a good time to violently oppose them. Right now, just support this kind of program and make the agreement like yes, we will give this kind of land, like we will share this kind of land as long as you do the sustainability in this land, but without harming and doing the violation towards the people that live there. And as long as this kind of agreement are already based on the consent of the both sides, we think that there will be there will be no people die just because of the bomb, because of the violation and such. We want the suffering itself to open the case from the closing opposition. Thank you.
We thank the member of opposition for that speech. Next, we call upon the government whip.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
So, wait a second. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Ladies and gentlemen, notice that today we're going to debate about this House will finally oppose the making of the Desert Bloom mission. First of all, we're going to have you to know again about the context of the Desert Bloom. That is to make or preserve the corrupted land or the destroyed land from the Palestinian, who will be preserved by the Israel and make forest or reservoir and etc. Ladies and gentlemen, notice that the first opening opposition said that they don't like us by giving the negative things about Israel, although those kind of negative things actually really does exist in the world, like what's happening right now in Israel and Palestine, all of those kind of things. And we should never justify the act of the war because it will corrupt many ways of mankind, either the environment or the mankind. And thus, they stated that the purpose of the making the Desert Bloom is to protecting the Palestinian people also, but and they will fix the nature. First of all, we're going to deal with the fixing about the nature because the environmentalists will be really applied to this kind of towards this kind of things. But we are questioning about the purpose of the making of the the purpose of making the Desert Bloom itself. Is it really just to protect the Palestinian people, or is it really they want to preserve the nature, or is it actually the expansion of the Israel itself? We know that the issue between the Israel and Palestine is about land right now, and by giving you by making the Bloom Desert mission, it makes them unexpectedly expand their land and making the as the Palestinian doesn't have no more land to go. And those kind of things for a nation, it's really a real deal because nation will be applied when you have citizen, you have a recognizable, and you have land, of course. And then next, go up to the second one is they also stated about the interests and actually clarified they want to avoiding the water crisis and optimize the land. But we never heard about the avoiding the water crisis. Is it the water crisis towards the Israeli or the water crisis about us, the Palestinian? If they just want to want to avoid the water crisis for themselves, it means that the second speaker of the opposition side has been backlashing the first speaker, that is saying that they will protect us, but actually they just want to have their own water. And the thing is, what happened with the water is the wastewater is actually going to the village, as the context slide already stated. And those kind of things, they also give the burden. They want to help us. So you saying that you will protecting us by giving us the wastewater and not intentionally killing us with this wastewater, like, come on. And then, yeah, saying about the protection towards the Palestinian, even it just want to stock up water, isn't it's actually really too late, because when the mission being done, the water waste being uploaded and being taken towards the village, it will just bring more harm than goods, actually, because yeah, by giving the waste doesn't means that you are protecting, you giving us the lower, maybe the lower quality of the water, because we know that in the making of the bloom you will need a lot of chemical, and yeah, you're drinking chemical right now, so it's bad. And this is one of the things that why we should violently oppose this kind of act, because yeah, it's not only just they want to maybe expanding their land, giving us more cut off, but also giving us a lot of disadvantage as a human itself. So unintentionally they want to preserve nature, but they harming the mankind. So as the people who are sour, we want to violently just stop this kind of anything of the rich. Is it by just shot them, burning them, or even disable their approach toward us, because we don't want this kind of things to be too late. We still can prevent these kind of things. And yeah, nowadays, but we cannot communicate again with Israeli. There's no way to be done with peacefully. So the one way is just to violently stating that we don't want to do it, and then about the optimization, they said about long before the bombing. So we're asking, is it the bombing was the plan after all of this kind of thing? So if you're saying for the bombing and you know about bombing, so is it intentionally you just give our harm to our mankind? And okay, how about we just saying that the bombing isn't a plan? So they're saying about the optimization. Doesn't Israel have their own land who they can preserve itself and giving the best to themselves? And we know that the conflict often happens towards the Israel and Palestine, and by the conflict means a lot of war and etc., and will bring destruction towards the environment itself. So while you make something, if you do it and again and doing the cycle, and you will end up in the loop. And then from the opposition that there are no human violation within the process of making the blooming desert mission, but we already stated that by giving the water waste towards our village, it's only making a human violation, which means you doesn't treat human as equal as possible. You doesn't give the to treat a human. The correct way to treat the human is not by giving the waste towards the village. You're harming the people out there. So, and they also state that they want the Israel will rebuild our life. The same question often we will ask again is what if the result is given only to the Israel side? Doesn't it means that we already being robbed? Not intentionally being robbed, but they're really in elegant way stated in the nature name, but taking on. And so this begins to the accomplishment of the violent way to oppose this such a act. So we beg you to propose this motion. Thank you.
We thank the government whip for that speech, and lastly, we call upon the opposition whip.
First thing first, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, wait a moment. Okay. If you will, I just unmute yourself because I will not be able to read the chat box. And also, is any gender pronoun needed? It will be he or him. Okay, I will start my speech in the 3, 2, 1. Panel, the first thing I want to clarify to you that what my first speaker talking about is sharing the land. It not totally we are sharing our land that obviously, ladies and gentlemen, but we just sharing the project and not obviously the land because we want the betterment of our society, right? Whether it is for Israeli or for the Palestinian, because we want the betterment of our society. And next, I will like to tell you what was happening in the debate when the opposing government talking about the political field between Israel and Palestine that comes many humans violence, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, that's in another case because we just want to fix the land. I don't want to hurt anyone, ladies and gentlemen, because this is an environmental issues that impacted everyone, whether the Palestinian of Israel. So we have to work together on this land and make a betterment of this land by making this kind of forest, for example, for farming, for example, or anything related to it. And at the end of the day, we will achieve it together, ladies and gentlemen. And it is not about the war, not about the conflict that happened in Israel or Palestinian, ladies and gentlemen. And also about the Israel intention that the causing government said to us, like, I can tell you that we already told you that in my first speakers that it is just for the betterment and nothing else, ladies and gentlemen. It is for the betterment for the society in which is live in the Palestine or Israel, ladies and gentlemen. And we will like to talk to you like we never tell you that we will give a waste water to the Palestinian people because it is a big no, ladies and gentlemen. But it is our intention to get better water supply, whether in Palestinian or Israel. So both of the side got the benefit of this kind of thing, ladies and gentlemen. And also talking about the human equality, it will not happen even under your case because you are kind of violence happen until at the end of the day because you all are letting this kind of conflict happen and not will be stopped because they are will not working together on whatever, ladies and gentlemen. This is the government case, ladies and gentlemen. And also when the opening government said that it is a waste to our water in Palestinian, like the country has destroyed this Palestinians habit and also Israel contaminating Palestinian water and try to shut down the Palestinian itself. But you never tell us Palestinians can get better without the Israel itself, ladies and gentlemen. And on their case regarding that they are so weak and being destroyed for the current time, ladies and gentlemen. In our side of the house, we will rebuild these villages and make a comfortable location for the Palestinians to have a good supply in water itself, ladies and gentlemen. So this is the thing that we have to point out, ladies and gentlemen. And also, when you state that the world bloom even if people dying, totally no, ladies and gentlemen, because we already told you like because we just build under destroy area that happened in the past, ladies and gentlemen. It means that we just fixing the area without hurting people because it's already destroyed and no one lived there, ladies and gentlemen. And also about the punishment by the PBB, etc., that cannot affect the Israel itself. Of course, it will not impact the Israel because they have such a power to obey that regarding the tourist Israel got support from mostly developed countries, ladies and gentlemen, such as America, Japan, South Korea, which take big part in the United Nations. So they have like confidence to do this kind of thing, ladies and gentlemen. So it is not justified if compared to the Palestinian, ladies and gentlemen. And also, you said that oppose means that protect themselves. I can tell you that status quo like Palestinian has left power over Israel. So keeping opposed will just harming yourself, ladies and gentlemen, because the fact that if there any conflict happen, the victim will be high in Palestinian, ladies and gentlemen, rather than the Israel itself. Because at the end of the day, it's still not okay for them, and they cannot rebuild themselves regarding to this kind of thing, ladies and gentlemen. And also comes to my explanation, like in the term of the betterment in both of the side, Palestine and Israel, we think this mission is still okay because bring a lot of impact towards the land, ladies and gentlemen. Because desert blooms means that the place where we can build such as planting, watering, farming, and a lot of things related to agricultural agenda or something like that, ladies and gentlemen. I can tell you that it bring benefits to both of the side. For the first thing, I can tell you for Palestinian, the first, helping them to rebuild their villages which has destroyed, ladies and gentlemen, because Palestinian people mostly cannot rebuild their villages because they don't have enough funding, and the fact that many Jews is an rich person in the world. By this, we hope it can be a hand for Palestinians to be more welfare in their self-land, ladies and gentlemen. And also, they are in war to admit their land because this conflict happened from the past, and just less than enough Palestinian happy people can rebuild their home, ladies and gentlemen. For example, many of houses and offices just destroyed and left behind, and then no one can fix it because they are not welfare at the very first place, ladies and gentlemen. And then this action will waste our land because we cannot live in this place. And the status quo is many of Palestinian supply come from Israel, such as food, vehicle, daily needs, or etc. Even if distributed from other country, but it's still through the Israel land. It means that whatever happened, the Palestinians still needs the Israel itself, ladies and gentlemen. And also, benefit for the Israel itself that I can tell you is they can develop their land and technology, such as making clean water, farming on the desert, and impacted to the Palestinian or Israel itself, ladies and gentlemen, because they have power to rebuild it, ladies and gentlemen. And letting means that we open a good way, such as our diplomacy for both of this country, ladies and gentlemen. It can be a start for the peace for the both of the country, ladies and gentlemen. And the peace can come through this way because both of them understand that they need each other to rebuild the betterment. The Israel have the technology and the Palestinians have the land, ladies and gentlemen. And when they work together, they can build this kind of thing and make such a big movement in their society, ladies and gentlemen. That's the thing that you have to point out. And at the end, protection will happen on both of the sides because at the end, protection will happen on both of the sides where the Palestinian can use this land and Israel can develop their way to build a betterment, ladies and gentlemen. And at the end, it will be better to work together rather than harming each other because of this conflict is never stopped, ladies and gentlemen. Because we can see that how many people dying every day because of this conflict and how many land that destroyed. And we hope that this destroyed land is not just destroyed as they are. We need to do something on this land to make a betterment, such as this kind of water, ladies and gentlemen. And this is what we live in here as Israel to help the other welfare country, ladies and gentlemen. That's the thing that we have to know. Thank you.
All right, we thank the opposition whip for that speech. That concludes the debate. Please wait here as I fill in the ballot forms and organize my oral adjudication. I'll be back shortly.